Terrible Haiku by Its Cover. Huh? Terrible Haiku is a book of everyone's least favorite kind of writing, poetry. But worse than your average poetry, Tatum Adams seems only interested in writing low-effort haiku. The haiku is, of course, an artful Japanese poem that has a meter of 5-7-5. It is usually used to capture a moment of nature or to share an insight. Taylor Swift, on the other hand, uses this as an opportunity to showcase his mediocre writing and utter lack of insight. To drive this home, he formatted his book in the style of a composition notebook. The pages look like they were shot by an unskilled photographer, but that's not the worst part. The worst part is that this awful writer decided he was also an artist and scattered various low-quality images throughout his book. But hey, let's cut this guy some slack. After all, this is the first book he's ever published. Maybe if we remove our critical lenses, we'll see something worth celebrating. After all, poetry is just an expression of the heart, in which case this author must be exceedingly dull. For an attempt at a book, I give Terrible Haiku by Taylor Swanby a 7 out of 10.
Book, 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 book.
Hey guys, it's me, Taylor. I don't normally do this kind of thing, but I thought since I'm launching a book, I would do kind of a Q&A as a sort of a fun book launch type thing. So I went ahead and gathered some questions from me. So let's get into it. Taylor from San Francisco writes, Taylor, I love your show and your face. Aw. How did you decide to write a book about haiku? Yeah, so back in college, I studied English in college, so I took a lot of poetry classes, and it kind of created this weird, I either loved a certain poet or a certain kind of poetry, or I just absolutely hated it. And for some reason at that time, haiku just rubbed me the wrong way. I was like, ugh, it's so short. It doesn't even rhyme. I started, just kind of poking fun at it, among other kinds of poetry, but haiku was the easiest to replicate. And I think that was ultimately the issue I took with it at the time, is that you could just write anything in a meter of 5, 7, and 5. And I mean, it would technically be haiku. So I thought I'd just play with it a bit, and I was in a play rehearsal. I had a friend, and we were sitting in the audience, and she and I, we would write awful haiku kind of back and forth as just sort of a fun way to pass the time while we were waiting for our scenes to come up. Eventually, after that, I looked at this list of poems that I had from this event, and I flipped through it, and I was like, these are good. I could write 200 of these. And so I did, and I don't think I quite published 200. I should probably know how many haiku I'm actually publishing, but I edited the book down just a little bit. But I wrote just a bunch more, and then sat on it for years, and then eventually decided I wanted to add pictures, and then I was bad at drawing, so I was like, oh, nobody wants to see my pictures. And then I thought, you know what? I don't care what people think. And so that's how I got to where I am today. A T. Swan from Alaska asks, what is your favorite book? Okay, so that's... I have a favorite book. I'll go ahead and list a couple books that I've really enjoyed. So probably one of my all-time favorites is easily The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Super funny book. Really kind of was one of those books I picked up that really inspired me to see just how wild and funny you could be with your writing. Another book series, this was a whole series that I really enjoyed, was the series of Unfortunate Events by Lemony Snicket. And the guy just had such a dry way of writing, and such a fun sense of humor that really kind of, from a young age, got me very invested in the idea of writing stories. And so instead I wrote poetry. In terms of the book that I generally say is my favorite, I generally say The Great Divorce by C.S. Lewis is my favorite because, if you look at other stories that try to depict heaven, it's usually very bland because heaven's, paradise, and the driving force of a story is conflict. And C.S. Lewis found a way to bring conflict into heaven where it didn't feel off. Anyways, I absolutely adore that story. I highly recommend it to people, and it's like maybe 120 pages or something. Okay, John Stamos from Swaziland asks, why come? I don't have pizza toes. I don't know. A certain Taylor Swanby from Massachusetts writes, why do you have 3 copies of Jerry Maguire on your shelf? I don't have actually 3 copies of Jerry Maguire. Of course, I only just grabbed 3. I have 8. I have 8 copies of Jerry Maguire on VHS, and there's a reason for it. It was a joke from a book that I was writing, where a guy, he goes to the store and he just sees all of these copies of Jerry Maguire, and he thinks, what if I bought these as like party favors? And so he buys 12 copies. So my collection is incomplete. I want to have 12 eventually, but right now I only have 8. So let's see. Taylor from Estonia asks, what are some big tips to aspiring writers of terrible poetry? The key to writing bad poetry is to write any kind of poetry because it's all bad. Taylor from Uzbekistan writes, big fan, big man. I'm 9 feet tall. I'm a small man living in a giant's body. Okay, that's not a question. Taylor from Eswatini writes, hey babe, I like the content. Thank you. Are you currently working on other books? Yes, I'm always working on other books. I do have plans of publishing other works in the future. Taylor from Nauru asks, where do you live? America. I know the British accent it throws people off sometimes, but yeah, I'm a full-blooded American. Taylor from Andorra asks, what are your hobbies? Because I'm not really making money doing it, I still list writing as a hobby, as well as making videos, and honestly doing art. I'm so very bad at it, but I like doing art. I don't know, I do so many things, but nothing physical. Jailer from prison asks, what program do you use for your art? I use Sketchbook. It's free, and it's like a poor man's Paint. I guess Paint is the poor man's paint. If you don't have Microsoft Paint, you can use Sketchbook instead. Let's see. Whaler from Melville asks, why'd your hair so long? 'Cause I didn't cut it. Sailor from Moon asks, what's your most embarrassing story? I auditioned for America's Got Talent when I was 18. And, there's a whole behind-the-scenes process, which is ridiculous. It's like they try to make your tragic backstory, if your backstory isn't tragic, they try to give you some, really petty reason for pursuing fame. I actually got through to the celebrity judges, because you got to kind of do the preliminary round. Then you go see the celebrity judges. So I got to talk very briefly to Howie Mandel and Sharon Osbourne and Pierce Morgan and Nick Cannon. In terms of those aspects, that was very cool. But also, I got the XXX, and I got booed by the audience, so that didn't feel very good because there's thousands of people there, and it is the biggest audience I'd ever performed for, and I just didn't do. I wasn't received well. It wasn't they didn't put me on their embarrassing reels, thankfully, because I kind of tried to have as little personality as possible once they buzzed me. I was like, oh, oh, this isn't going my way, I'm going to be boring so that you guys like won't feature me. And that seemed to work. They only had me in a couple background shots of the show, and they didn't show my act for anyone across America. So that at least kind of made me feel better. I was like, well, at least, you know, I didn't have millions of people laughing at me, you know. But I stopped watching AGT after that, though. No Name asks, what kind of shows do you watch? With a period and no question mark. So I watch good shows. I've always kind of been partial towards animation, so I'll watch some anime. I like watching classic Simpsons and Futurama and all that. Big fan of Frasier. In terms of new stuff, not much. I am watching WandaVision, and I'm really, really enjoying that. That's a lot of fun. Friendel Ginth asks, it's a Friday night, you're kicking back with some friends, what's your drink of choice? Probably Diet Coke. You know, like alcohol's fine, so far as things that taste bad go. Junsh Nert asks, how's your love life? I don't want to talk about it. Aberdon Fendelbunt asks, you're so funny. Do you ever do stand-up comedy? No. Well, one time I did some stand-up comedy. I'm not good at it. I'm not funny in that kind of way, and I really wish I was. I actually will kind of go through phases where I'll be like, you know, I should write some stand-up. I should be able to do that. And so I'll sit down and I'll write kind of a stand-up bit, and then I'll give it like, you know, a month, and then I'll come back to it and reread it with, you know, fresh eyes, fresh mind, and like it sucks. Like it consistently sucks. So no, I don't really do stand-up comedy. Durst Burke writes, how many jackets do you have? Probably between 10 and maybe 13 or 15. I have a lot of jackets, and I love them. I love them a lot. And yeah, they're just very special to me. And finally, Pumble Duddlepunge writes, how can we buy your book? Yeah, just go to Amazon.com and look for Terrible Haiku by Taylor Swanby. And I will also include a link down in the description. So, you know, please, if you don't mind dropping a few dollars, I think it's $2.99. And I know it's not the longest book, and it's poetry, and it's bad art. But, you know, buy it anyway, you know. Just do it, just because. And if you hate it, sucks to be you. But, you know, everybody buys a bad book once in a while, so now it's your turn. I'm terrible at advertising for myself. Buy my book, please. Support me, support my channel. If you like seeing me review books and respond to a Q&A as though I was being asked by real fans, go ahead and do that and buy the book. Just buy the book. Buy the book.